group of medical experts have urged doctors to prescribe fewer antidepressants to patients with mild mental health issues. This is to curb what they say is an over-reliance on the pills. Prescriptions have doubled in the past 10 years, and the group said a pill for every ill must stop. They've suggested that doctors should prescribe lifestyle changes instead, like gardening or volunteering, whatever, to maybe encourage people not to always turn to antidepressants. But Denise, I know this subject, we've discussed it many times, very close to your heart, and you've spoken very openly about depression, but yours is clinical depression, for which I presume you have to have antidepressants.
I've got to try and précis this because I have a lot to say as usual. I've suffered from clinical depression / major depressive disorder for 30-odd years. I am a huge, massive advocate for antidepressant medication when it is prescribed for the right reasons. And for me, I have a chemical imbalance and I need an antidepressant to help to replace that. And it has literally saved my life and many other people's lives. I have worked for many years as a medical mental health advocate to try to break down the stigma of taking medication, because many people, if they are a diabetic, they know they will take insulin for the rest of their lives to keep them alive. And that was always what, you know, my mum used to say to me. I say, I don't know if I want to take them. She said, if you had bronchitis, you'd take an antibiotic, blah, blah, blah. Alex George, the guy from Love Island, who's a well-respected doctor, is doing a brilliant campaign, taking his medication for depression in the morning to share that there shouldn't be a stigma. However, there is a big difference between mental illness and some mental health issues. I am not, as an advocate, denigrating mental health issues and the importance of them. And I can't stand it when people say to me, when I'm clinically depressed, which touch wood I haven't been for 4 years, just go out for a walk. When you are in a depression, you cannot talk, you cannot walk, you cannot eat, you cannot shower. So going out for a walk is ridiculous.
But would you advocate what they're saying
some
is for
mental health issues? There for some forms of anxiety. Sadly, we can't access the mental health services that we need to avoid taking medication. We can't even access the GP. But I do think there are alternative ways like CBT that could absolutely help people without medication. So it's a two-pronged thing from me. I do agree with what they're saying, but I do not want it to take away from the fact that antidepressant medication is a lifesaver when
But they're also
properly.
saying, Janet, that it doesn't always work for a lot of people. So it's almost like it just becomes that thing that doctors do. They've got less than 10 minutes with you when you can get an appointment.
Yeah, and
so somebody presents to them and in a terrible state and, you know, saying... And some people, like Denise said, have suicidal thoughts. You know, their first port of call is probably going to be antidepressants.
Yeah, and the thing is that they're giving out far too many prescriptions. I mean, I think the figure for the last year was 85.6 million. So the number of prescriptions being written out is astonishingly high. The other thing is, it's not just the first prescription, it's repeat prescriptions. And I've written a lot about the fact that once you get on a drug or on a repeat prescription, some of these drugs are very hard for you to stop taking, and also there isn't that will in the National Health Service to stop prescribing them either, because, as Denise has said, the alternative therapies like counselling and so on are so oversubscribed that handing out a pill is much easier. And I
know that they often prescribe, you know, talking therapies and things. Often it's online, and like you said, I know with my sister Denise, her depression would be so bad that the thought of actually going online and
you can't write a letter, pick up a phone, you can't
do anything.
But that's the definitive divide that you're talking about, the clinically depressed and the anxiety issues, the mental health issues. There are platforms, there are apps and podcasts that people can use which will help low-level mental health issues, which will free up the big, long waiting list that people are waiting to see
at least
with real conditions.
You're so right about that. There's a lot of online counselling now that a lot of people would find useful, and they can access it, and if they can't get on an NHS waiting list, it's not a very expensive therapy.
Yeah, there are things to bridge the gap.
But people
that we
don't
didn't
know
have back
about
in the
them enough.
day.
They think I need a tablet because everybody's watched people taking tablets.
But it's like
for
something
years.
like if you break up with your partner, you will be, you know, desperately, desperately sad. But that is often confused with depression. Depression depresses everything. You don't feel anything. Sadness is something that you should feel as a result of something making you sad. Doesn't mean it's good. It just means you don't necessarily need a tablet for that.
And also, just quickly, antidepressants are now used to deal with pain because obviously over the years I've had chronic joint pain, I've got arthritis, and I have been offered antidepressants over and over again at a low dosage, but antidepressants are being now used for joint pain. And there's always that danger that when you prescribe it, even at a low dosage, that someone will think, oh, I feel a bit, you know, like the feeling of this, and they won't be so keen to give it up.
So
But
readily
they're not as
available.
addictive. A tranquilizer is addictive, and also tranquilizers and antidepressants always get mixed together. I've never had a tranquilizer in my life. It's just about how and why the doctors need to...
I mean, obviously, we are not advocating at all that anybody should stop taking their antidepressants.
No.
And if you wish to do so, obviously, you need to talk to your doctor. It was just an interesting that this is people from the medical profession saying there are concerns that they're being over-prescribed. So we'd love to know what you think about that. Very interesting.